Well, yeah, my name's Dan Schaefer, and I've been a storyboard artist, conceptual artist for about 25 years. I started out working in the comic book field, and that led to getting to know people in the animation field. And then the first job I did in animation was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the original TV show.
Nice.
And that led to doing other shows like The Mask and several other cartoon shows. And then about the mid-90s, I started working for Roger Corman, doing a couple of different comics for him, which was interesting because they started to, one of the comics I did actually was being written and drawn about the same time the movie was, so they were borrowing back and forth between the comic book and the movie. So that really got me into film, I think. And the next year I started working for Adidas doing storyboards and all kinds of other things for Adidas International and doing lots of advertising. And then that late 90s I started really doing features, and I've been doing features and TV shows since then. So I currently work on the show Grimm for NBC, and I've been working for TNT to do Leverage, which just ended last year, and so I'm doing another one for Dean Devlin that's coming up. I've worked on about 40 features, including Paranoid Park, Gone, many other movies. I'm working on a new movie now called No Turning Back, which we're going to shoot in New Orleans. So, and I've done a lot of other things on the side. I've been an art director. I've been a concept artist, which is different than storyboards slightly. And I've done my own documentary features as well. I did a movie about the Trailblazers a couple of years ago that was about the whole history of the team from the early 70s through about 2007, 8. And I did one about hockey. I did one about opera. My wife works in the opera field, so we got an opportunity to work on a collaborative effort with a school in Poland, and so part of it was done in the United States and part of it was done in Poland. So I got to shoot all that because I couldn't afford to bring somebody and have them shoot it, and it was a good experience, getting behind the camera. So I've kind of done a little of everything, and I love to edit, which is almost the reason I started making my own movies, because I like the editing process, which is very similar to storyboards. The real role of a storyboard artist is to work with the director to break down the shots that he or she sees, get the compositions, get the storytelling down. It's almost like a rehearsal for creating a film. And like what I do on Grimm, I'll go through and work with the director to break down very complex scenes, and that usually require CG, stunts, vehicles, anything that's a complex group of movement, and part of that is by knowing, basically three things. Perspective, know how to draw the human figure well enough, and then understand film language, which is, knowing your shot types, like from wide to extreme close-up, and then knowing how a dolly and a crane and tracking shots and the mechanics of the actual filming works. So you have to be a little bit of a director to work as a storyboard artist. So because you're not only imagining it, but you're having to put it down into form that all the different parts of the crew can understand. For instance, like you might incorporate things from the costume department because they have a costume ready for a character. So they can see how it will look, and then the set design might be partly done. Maybe it's not done. Maybe you draw the set without there being a set yet, and that influences the the art department, the set department. So you really are the first one to sort of see the movie with the director. And so it's also used later on in the editing department. The editor might want the storyboard so that they can see initially how the scene was planned out, because it will come back to him or her in pieces, you know, because oftentimes you shoot out of sequence. You might shoot some of it, you might shoot some of it later, you know, and do all the exteriors one day and do the interiors the next day, you know. So, of course, there's people to keep all that straight, but you're getting it back, and this way you can see kind of what the initial idea of the film was planned as. So, and I think, you know, part of the difficulty of the job is having to draw very quickly and think on your feet, because you don't get a lot of time to do the work oftentimes, you know. Oftentimes with TV, you have 1 week to break down and prepare for one episode. So you have 7 days, and then your 7 days you're actually shooting. So it's different than a movie where you might have several months to prepare for a film. I know with really big budget films, you would storyboard the entire film. For the majority of the films, you're really just storyboarding the most complicated shots, because as you see, even doing a short film, you could be storyboarding many, many boards for 10 minutes, you know, a 10-minute piece. So, you know, a movie that's $100 million is completely storyboarded. Although I have storyboarded whole films, and you know, I prefer that, but oftentimes it's a time issue. So, so does anyone have any questions?
You want to look at some of your storyboards first, Dan?
Right.
I'll scroll down.
This was for a commercial for Cadillac, and I worked with a director. I'm trying to remember his name, but he did. But in this case, it was a director who had been known for doing features and music videos. So it was kind of like making a movie, because the budget must have been several $1 million for a 30-second ad, 2 30-second ads. So, so we did it, and this was for you know, like consumer credit or something like that, you know. And in that case, the last one, I could spend a little more time because certain agencies will give you time, whereas in movies, it's very much running all the time, you know, which is kind of why I like doing advertising, because this, like for Nike, I got to spend my time on it. Although it's actually very difficult to slow down once you're used to running all the time. So that was for a children's video, which was fun to do, you know. This is for an episode for this season of Grimm, episode 2 of 4, where a guy is sort of attacked by somebody in a car who has sort of like a mutation. This is out of order, but this is a good example of using interesting angles to make it interesting, like looking up from the victim, looking down, looking from the floor, you know. The whole idea of doing storyboards is a little bit like musical notes. You know, if you had the same 2 shots all the time, it would sound like da 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 da. You know, it might not have any rhythm. So, putting in and reestablishing where you're at, creating different angles, using movement. Like in Paranoid Park, there's a scene where the kid and the policeman are at the very end of the table, and the camera is slowly moving in to a shot of just their 2 heads. But it takes about 3 minutes to do it. And my philosophy in that is that if it's a good composition, it's worth really using. And in that case, you got 3 minutes of dialogue done in, you know, a couple hours, which is really good for a film. And it stays interesting that way because there's movement and there's something going on. So, and it's very economical, but if you can be dynamic with your composition, it's goes a long way, you know. Because so often the shots can get stagnant and boring if you're, say, shooting back and forth between people for a long period of time, you know. Even like, there's a movie called The Conversation by Coppola, where the first shot is of people talking on the ground, sort of an aerial shot of someone looking at them and listening to them. And so you get to really follow them around and start hearing things. And you have to sort of investigate what it is they're looking at and listening to. So I think that's the other thing, is you try to make people, get people involved. Don't show them everything. Don't reveal everything very quickly. Try to keep it a mystery for as long as possible. You know, maybe if someone's talking to someone, you don't show the person that's talking until there's a certain point when it's necessary, so that you're developing an idea of what that character looks like in your head before you see them, so therefore it's a shock, you know. Or maybe not even showing either character, just letting you listen to them, you know. So let's see what else is here. Okay, there's a scene in that episode where this cat is on the ceiling, and Rosalie is running away from this cat that she just notices by looking up and seeing the cat on the ceiling. And she drops down, she starts running, and then it's sort of more of the point of view, lower angle of the cat running through the room. Sliding around the corner, she runs to the door, she grabs the door, she quickly throws the door open, and I put an angle here so that the camera is twisting and pushing, so that's even more dynamic, and it looks as if it's the point of view of the cat jumping at the door. So let's see what comes next.
So Dan, let me just ask, so
Yeah.
when you, I mean, I'm sure every company is going to ask you to present your storyboards in a different fashion, but I mean, is the cinematographer or the DP on the shoot's going to go, I'm not going to do that particular shot, we don't have the time, or do they go, well, it's here on the storyboard, I'm going to, I mean, how does that work?
That's a good question, because some DPs really like having some sort of reference, because they know that the directors already went through this process.
Sure.
Then there's probably the other half who doesn't like that, because they're surrendering some of their creativity to me. So the best situation is where we're all working together. You know, the art director gets mad too, because he hasn't created the sets that we're shooting, so he's sort of left out of it. But the staging is the most important part.
Okay.
You know, I think.
I was gonna say, like, I think I remember from the. Can you go back, Tom?
Yeah.
I remember from the scene. That cat was CG.
Yes.
At some points.
Yeah.
So do you work with some of the riggers when they're working with that kind of
Not
that animation
really.
aspect?
It's almost like it's a wish list. This is what we want to do.
Gotcha.
This is what you guys get to do. You know, and like, for instance, that cat is sort of based on my own vision of my own cat at home sliding around, because they do that. So.
When you get to the point of storyboarding, do you have a very good idea of what angles or what perspectives you want to use, or are you just kind of experimenting as you go along?
Well, again, every director is different, and they're always a different situation. Generally, I will sit down with the director, and they will walk through it. You know, they might literally act it out, or they'll do very loose sketches on a piece of paper. You know, they'll just go through a notebook. They might have a shot list. You know, they might just give you a shot list and say, go ahead, do it, because that's fairly clear. You know, if it's a clear shot list, you know kind of what to do. And they also want you to add your creativity to it. You know, they know that, you know, in my case, I've done it for 25 years, so I can add something, and they like that, because they have a lot to do. You know, they're dealing with the crew, they're dealing with the actors and the producers, so they're almost like, you know, busy 18 hours a day, so managing people. So they like having the input.